He dismisses her feelings and makes her doubt her reality. That is the essence of how a narcissistic husband begins to wear down his wife, and it's not always obvious at first. On the surface, it can look like sarcasm, a joke, or a simple disagreement, but over time, the repeated dismissal of her emotions becomes a powerful form of control. Imagine a wife sharing something vulnerable. Maybe she's upset about how he spoke to her in front of friends. Instead of acknowledging her hurt, he says, "You're overreacting," or "You're too sensitive." Those words sound small, but they carry a heavy weight. They send the message that her feelings are not valid, that her perception of the event is wrong, and that the problem lies within her instead of in his actions. Each time this happens, she learns to question herself just a little more until her sense of reality begins to erode. This pattern is not about disagreement between two people who see things differently. In a healthy relationship, disagreements lead to dialogue, compromise, and understanding. Here, the goal is not understanding. The goal is control. By dismissing her feelings, the narcissistic husband shifts the focus away from his behavior and places it on her reaction. He doesn't need to change if the problem is always her. That is how the cycle works. He creates the injury. She reacts, he denies the injury, and she begins to believe her reaction is the real issue. The psychological effect of this is something often called gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone manipulates another person into doubting their perception of reality. When a wife hears again and again that her feelings are wrong or exaggerated, she starts to believe it. If she cries, she's told she's dramatic. If she stays quiet, she's told she's cold. If she asks for respect, she's told she's needy. No matter what she does, the message is clear: her emotions are unacceptable. That creates confusion, and confusion creates dependence. She starts relying on him to define what's real, what's acceptable, what's worth feeling. Over time, this dismissal doesn't just silence her voice in arguments, it changes the way she sees herself. She might stop speaking up altogether, not because she agrees with him, but because she knows her words will be twisted. She may begin apologizing constantly, even when she's done nothing wrong, because she's been trained to believe she's always the problem. Slowly, she learns to suppress her needs, her opinions, her very sense of identity in order to keep the peace. What's tragic is that she may not even notice how much she's lost until years have gone by. One of the cruelest parts of this dynamic is how invisible it can be to others. A narcissistic husband often knows how to appear charming or caring in public. Friends and family may see him as attentive or even funny because he saves his dismissive behavior for private moments. That makes the wife's reality even harder to hold on to. If no one else sees what she sees, maybe she really is imagining it. This isolation deepens her self-doubt and makes it harder to reach out for help. It's also important to understand that the dismissal doesn't always come in obvious, sharp words. Sometimes it comes through silence. A husband who ignores his wife's tears, changes the subject when she shares something important, or gives her the cold shoulder after she opens up is sending the same message: your feelings don't matter. That silence can be even more painful than cruel words because it communicates indifference. Indifference tells her she's invisible, and invisibility is one of the most crushing experiences in a marriage. Another layer of this is the way the narcissistic husband can twist empathy into a weapon. He may listen just enough to appear caring, but then use what he's heard against her later. If she shares a fear or insecurity, he may bring it up in the middle of an argument as proof of her weakness. What began as vulnerability becomes ammunition. The wife learns that sharing her feelings isn't safe, and so she stops sharing them at all. The very intimacy that should be the foundation of marriage becomes a liability. The long-term effects of this dismissal can reach into every area of the wife's life. Her self-esteem begins to collapse. She may struggle to make decisions, even small ones, because she's been conditioned to believe her judgment is flawed. She may stop pursuing friendships, hobbies, or career goals because she feels she has nothing valuable to offer. She might even develop anxiety or depression, not realizing that these feelings are connected to the constant invalidation at home. The damage is not just emotional. It can manifest physically in stress, exhaustion, and illness. What's striking is how predictable the cycle becomes once you see it clearly. The wife expresses a feeling. The husband dismisses it. She doubts herself. He reinforces the doubt. She quiets down. He feels in control. The cycle repeats. Each round makes her quieter and him bolder. What started as subtle comments, "You're too sensitive," can escalate into outright accusations. You're crazy. By then, she may feel trapped, unable to trust her own mind, and unable to see a way out. But recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking it. Understanding that dismissal is not a sign of her weakness, but a tactic of his control can help her reclaim her perspective. Her feelings are not too much. Her reactions are not the problem. The real issue is the consistent refusal to treat her emotions with respect. Naming that truth is powerful because it reopens the door to reality, the reality she has been pressured to doubt. At its core, the dismissal of a wife's feelings by a narcissistic husband is not about emotion at all. It's about power. If he can convince her that her feelings are invalid, he can control the narrative of the relationship. He becomes the authority on what's true, what's acceptable, what's real. But the truth remains her feelings are valid simply because they are hers. They don't need his permission to exist. They don't need his approval to matter. And so, while the narcissistic husband treats his wife by dismissing her feelings and making her doubt her reality, that does not erase the reality itself. Deep down, she knows when she's hurt. She knows when she's being silenced. The challenge is remembering that knowledge in the face of constant denial. But even in the quietest, most dismissed corners of her life, the truth of her experience remains. And that truth, once reclaimed, is stronger than any dismissal. He uses control and conditional love to keep her small. This is the pattern of a narcissistic husband who wants power, not partnership. On the surface, his actions may look like care or concern, but when you peel back the layers, what you find is control dressed up as love. It is not about protecting his wife. It is about keeping her dependent on him, making sure that her sense of self never grows beyond the boundaries he sets. Control can take many forms, some obvious, some subtle. One of the clearest is financial control. He may insist on handling all the money, claiming that he is better at managing it or that it is for her own good. He might discourage her from working, or if she does work, demand access to her earnings. The message is clear. Without him, she cannot provide for herself. That creates dependence, and dependence keeps her in place. In a healthy marriage, finances are shared and transparent, but here, finances become a leash. Another form of control shows up in her social life. A narcissistic husband may criticize her friends, sowing seeds of doubt about their loyalty. He might tell her that certain people are a bad influence or that they don't really care about her. Over time, she begins to pull away from those connections, not because she wants to, but because she fears conflict at home. He may also monitor her time, asking where she's going, who she's with, how long she'll be gone. At first, it can feel like attentiveness, but soon it feels like surveillance. By narrowing her world, he makes himself the center of it. Control also hides itself in decision-making. He may insist on having the final word in household choices, where they live, what they buy, how they raise children. He may frame it as leadership, but it is really about dominance. If she voices an opinion, he overrides it. If she pushes back, he tells her she doesn't understand the bigger picture. The more he decides, the less she trusts her own judgment. Slowly, she begins to believe that she is not capable of making good choices. That belief keeps her small, and that smallness makes him feel large. Conditional love is the fuel that powers all of this. Affection, kindness, and attention are given only when she complies. If she agrees with him, he showers her with praise. If she questions him, he withdraws. A simple disagreement can turn into cold silence, slammed doors, or days of emotional distance. She learns quickly that the only way to restore peace is to surrender. Over time, this trains her to avoid conflict altogether, to silence herself before he ever needs to. His love is not steady, it is a reward system. Do what he wants, and she gets warmth. Step out of line, and she gets punished. This cycle creates confusion because she never knows which version of him she will get. One day he may be affectionate, telling her how much she means to him. The next day, he may be distant or cruel. That unpredictability keeps her on edge, always trying to guess how to please him, always measuring her words and actions against his shifting moods. It is like walking through a minefield where the rules change every day. Instead of living freely, she lives carefully, shaping herself around his expectations. The psychological impact of conditional love is profound. She begins to link her worth to his approval. If he is kind, she feels valued. If he is cold, she feels worthless. Her sense of self no longer comes from within, it comes from him. That makes her easy to control because the fear of losing his affection is greater than the desire to assert her own needs. She stays small not because she wants to, but because she has been taught that safety only exists within the limits he sets. Even the moments of affection, which might seem genuine, serve his control. When he is kind, it is not because he respects her, but because she has behaved the way he wants. Those moments of kindness keep her hopeful, convincing her that the relationship can still be good. She clings to them, even as the cycle repeats, because they feel like proof that he can change. In reality, they are just another layer of control, a way to reset the cycle and keep her invested. Control and conditional love also work by rewriting the meaning of sacrifice. In a healthy marriage, compromise is mutual. Both partners give and receive. But here, sacrifice is one-sided. She gives, he takes. And if she dares to complain, he accuses her of being ungrateful. He may say things like, "Look at everything I do for you," while ignoring all the ways he has stripped her of freedom. His narrative becomes the only one that matters, and hers is silenced under the weight of his self-righteousness. The long-term effect is a shrinking of the self. She becomes smaller not just in her choices, but in her spirit. She stops dreaming big dreams. She stops imagining a future that belongs to her. She forgets what it feels like to live without fear of disapproval. In many ways, she becomes a shadow of the person she once was. And that is exactly what he wants, because a shadow is easy to control. Yet, even in the middle of this control, there are moments when she feels the truth pressing against her. A quiet voice inside whispers that love should not feel like fear. Affection should not be a prize she has to earn. Control should not be mistaken for care. Those moments of clarity may be brief, but they are powerful because they remind her that she is not as small as he wants her to believe. She still carries within her the person she was before, the person she can be again. The strategy of a narcissistic husband is simple: use control to limit her world and use conditional love to make her accept those limits. It is a slow erosion, not a sudden collapse. But the result is the same. She is left doubting herself, dependent on him, and afraid to step outside the cage he has built. The tragedy is that he calls it love, but the truth is love does not shrink. Love expands. Love does not punish with silence. Love listens, respects, and nurtures. Anything less is not love at all, no matter how convincingly it is packaged. He shifts blame and avoids responsibility. This is one of the defining traits of a narcissistic husband and one of the most damaging patterns for his wife. At its core, blame shifting is about refusing to be accountable for his own actions. No matter what happens, no matter how obvious his role, the fault is placed somewhere else, usually on her. The result is not just unfairness, it is a distortion of reality that leaves her carrying the weight of problems she did not create. It often starts small. Maybe he forgets an appointment. Instead of admitting he overlooked it, he blames her for not reminding him. If he is late to dinner, it's because she didn't tell him what time to leave. If he loses his temper, it's because she pushed his buttons. In every situation, the logic is the same. If something goes wrong, it is her fault. By refusing responsibility, he avoids accountability, but more importantly, he shifts the burden onto her. She becomes the scapegoat, the one who must absorb the blame for everything that happens. Over time, this pattern becomes exhausting. She may begin to preemptively apologize just to avoid conflict, even when she knows she has done nothing wrong. She may replay conversations in her head, trying to figure out how she could have said or done something differently to prevent his anger. The truth is, nothing she does will ever be enough, because the goal is not resolution. It is deflection. His priority is never to admit fault, but to protect his image and his sense of superiority. This blame shifting can become so ingrained that it extends to every corner of their life together. If finances are tight, it is because she spends too much, even if he is the one overspending. If the children misbehave, it is because she is not a good mother, even if he undermines her authority at every turn. If their relationship feels strained, it is because she is too emotional, too cold, or too demanding. By framing every problem as her fault, he keeps himself untouched by criticism and paints her as the constant source of failure. The psychological toll of this is immense. Living under constant blame creates guilt, even when she is innocent. Over time, guilt turns into shame. Shame tells her that not only does she make mistakes, but that she is the mistake. That belief is powerful because it makes her less likely to stand up for herself and more likely to accept the distorted version of reality he presents. She begins to internalize his accusations, carrying responsibility for things far beyond her control. Avoiding responsibility is not just about blame shifting. It is also about denying reality. If she confronts him directly with evidence of his wrongdoing, he may flatly deny it. He may rewrite the story, insisting that events did not happen the way she remembers. If she brings up past promises he failed to keep, he may accuse her of dwelling on the past instead of moving forward. This denial leaves her questioning her own memory, her own perception. It is a form of gaslighting that keeps her unsteady and makes his version of events the only one that seems solid. Sometimes, instead of denying outright, he will minimize. He may say she is making a big deal out of nothing, or that everyone makes mistakes, or that she is too critical. By downplaying his actions, he reduces their importance and shifts the focus back onto her reaction. The real problem, in his view, is not what he did. It is how she responded. This tactic keeps the spotlight off his behavior and places it squarely on her feelings, once again avoiding responsibility while making her doubt herself. In moments when blame, shifting alone is not enough, he may go on the offensive. He might turn the tables, accusing her of the very behavior she is confronting him about. If she says he is being dishonest, he may accuse her of lying. If she points out his selfishness, he may call her selfish. This projection creates confusion because suddenly she is defending herself against accusations instead of holding him accountable. The original issue is buried under a new conflict, and once again, he escapes responsibility. The cycle of blame and avoidance creates a toxic environment where growth is impossible. A healthy relationship requires two people willing to own their mistakes, to apologize, and to change. Without accountability, there can be no trust. Without trust, there can be no true intimacy. In this dynamic, the wife may still try to repair the relationship, but she is always repairing alone. He is not working with her. He is working against her, protecting his ego at her expense. Over time, she may notice that no matter how hard she tries, the narrative never changes. If she is patient, he says she is weak. If she is firm, he says she is harsh. If she is forgiving, he takes advantage. If she holds a boundary, he calls her selfish. Every path leads back to blame. This realization can feel hopeless, but it also reveals the truth. The problem is not her. The problem is his refusal to take responsibility for anything. The impact of constant blame shifting extends beyond the marriage itself. It can affect her friendships, her family relationships, even her work. She may carry the habit of over-apologizing into other areas of her life. She may struggle with self-doubt, worrying that she is always at fault. She may feel isolated, convinced that no one else could understand what she is going through. The blame that he has placed on her shoulders becomes a heavy burden she carries everywhere. Yet, even in the midst of this pattern, there are moments of clarity, moments when she sees how unreasonable the blame really is, moments when she recognizes that no one person can truly be the cause of every problem. Those moments are cracks in the wall he has built, glimpses of reality that remind her she is not crazy, not broken, not the constant source of failure he claims. They remind her that responsibility is not something to be feared. It is something to be shared. And if he refuses to share it, the imbalance will never change. At its heart, the refusal to take responsibility is an act of cowardice. It is easier to blame than to face the truth. It is easier to attack than to admit fault. But love is not about ease. Love is about honesty, accountability, and the willingness to grow. A husband who cannot accept responsibility cannot truly love, because love requires humility. Without humility, there is only ego, and ego cannot sustain a marriage. So he shifts blame and avoids responsibility, keeping himself safe while leaving his wife burdened. But the truth remains, she is not the source of every problem. She is not the one who must carry all the blame. Responsibility is his to take, whether he chooses it or not. And though he may twist the story, deny the facts, and cast the blame on her shoulders, the truth does not change. Deep down, he knows it. Deep down, she feels it. And the truth, once seen clearly, has a way of breaking through even the thickest fog of blame.